A sudden, fierce wind swept through the square. Before the eyes of the astonished villagers, Lulu's form shimmered and shifted, her body elongating and transforming into that of a giant snake. Once upon a time, in a peaceful village somewhere in Africa, there was a woman named Zara and her husband, Juma. They had been together for 20 years but had no children. All of Zara's friends had children who were growing up, and she felt very left out whenever she spent time with them. Her friends only talked about their kids. "Can you believe my son is already 10?" one would say, followed by stories about their children's big moments and successes. This made Zara feel desperate for a child of her own. She had tried many solutions, but everyone kept telling her to wait for the right time, which only made her more impatient. One day, Zara went to the market and ran into an old friend. This woman told her to visit a nearby village to see a witch doctor who might solve her problem. Filled with hope, Zara rushed home to tell Juma about this opportunity. However, Juma was skeptical. "Zara, we've tried so many things," he said. "These promises always end in disappointment. We should believe that if it's meant to be, it will happen when it's supposed to." But Zara was determined. "Juma, this feels different. I can't just sit around waiting. I need to do this, or I'll always wonder what could have been. Please, try to see it from my perspective." Despite his concerns, Juma couldn't change Zara's mind. The very next day, she traveled to the village her friend mentioned. It seemed the witch doctor was expecting her. He greeted her with a look that seemed to know everything about her. "Zara," he began, his voice sounding as old as time itself. "I've been waiting for you. I know why you're here, and I've prepared exactly what you need." He gave her a small bottle with a potion inside. "Drink this, and in 9 months, you'll have a daughter, but be careful. She will be tied to the spirit world. She must never marry." Zara felt both scared and excited. "Thank you," she said quietly, holding the potion like it was the most valuable thing in the world. Back home, she told Juma about the witch doctor's warning. Juma was worried. "This is dangerous, Zara. What have we agreed to?" he asked, looking very concerned. But it was too late for second thoughts. Zara, driven by her deep desire, drank the potion that night, hoping with all her heart for the child she so dearly wanted. 9 months later, Zara and Juma were amazed to welcome their daughter, whom they named Lulu, meaning pearl. Lulu was no ordinary girl. Her eyes shone with a special light, and she had wisdom beyond her years. Lulu grew up in the village as a beacon of joy for Zara and Juma. From a very young age, it was clear she was unlike the other children. Her connection to the world around her was profound. She seemed to communicate with nature in a way that no one else could. Birds would land on her shoulders as if greeting an old friend, and the wind seemed to change direction at her whim. One sunny afternoon, as Lulu wandered through the village, she stumbled upon a small crowd gathered around a young boy. He had fallen from a tree and twisted his ankle, his face contorted in pain as his friends looked on helplessly. The villagers hesitated to touch him, fearing they might worsen his injury. Lulu, with her heart full of compassion, knelt beside the boy without a second thought. She gently placed her hands over his swollen ankle, closing her eyes as she whispered words too soft for anyone to hear. The air around them seemed to pulse with an unseen energy, and within moments, the boy's cries ceased. When Lulu opened her eyes and removed her hands, the swelling had visibly reduced, and the boy gingerly stood up, amazed as he tested his weight on his foot. He looked at Lulu with wide eyes, his fear replaced by a mixture of gratitude and awe. The crowd erupted into murmurs of disbelief and admiration. "Did you see that?" one villager exclaimed. "She healed him just like that," another added, snapping their fingers for emphasis. But not all whispers were of wonder. Some bore the weight of suspicion and fear. "This is not natural. She's meddling with forces beyond our understanding," an elder muttered, shaking his head as he backed away from the gathering. When Lulu returned home, the news of her deed had already reached Zara and Juma. They sat her down, their expressions a mix of pride and concern. "Lulu, we heard about what happened today," Zara began. What you did was extraordinary, but we must be careful. People might not understand, and their fear could turn into something dangerous. Juma nodded, adding, "Your gift is a blessing, my child, but it's also a burden. We live in a world that fears what it cannot explain. You must tread carefully, for not all will see your actions as acts of kindness." Tears welled up in Lulu's eyes as the weight of her parents' words settled on her shoulders. "I don't understand," she whispered, a single tear trailing down her cheek. "Why me? Why am I like this? All I wanted was to help." Zara wrapped her arms around Lulu, holding her tightly. "We know, my dear, and we're so proud of you. But the world can be a harsh place for those who are different. We just want to protect you from it as much as we can." That night, Lulu lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the moonlight casting shadows across her room. Her heart ached with a loneliness that seemed to consume her very being. She was different, marked by a destiny she didn't choose and didn't understand. Her abilities, though a source of healing and light, also isolated her, casting her into a solitude that not even her parents' love could penetrate. From then on, people started avoiding her out of fear. Villagers started gossiping about her, and everywhere she went, people were afraid of her and would immediately leave. She was unable to make friends, and parents would warn their children to stay away from her because she was cursed. When Lulu grew into an adult, her life became even more complicated. All the young men and even young women in the village avoided her like a plague, leaving her alone with no friends. One evening in the busy market, with its colorful fabrics and the smell of spices, Lulu moved among the stalls, lost in her own thoughts. She was familiar with people staring and whispering about her as she passed. Walking by the various vendors, she spotted a young man she hadn't seen before. He was talking and laughing with a shopkeeper, his laughter sounding real and joyful, which made him stand out in the usual noise of the market. This young man was Kido. Kido looked up, and their eyes met. In that moment, the world around Lulu seemed to quiet. "Hello," Kido said, approaching her with a smile that reached his eyes. "I'm Kido. I couldn't help but notice you. This market is full of wonders, but you, by far, are the most captivating." Lulu was taken aback, not by his compliment, but by the sincerity she heard in his voice. "I'm Lulu," she replied, cautiously returning his smile. "And you are different from the others." "Different how?" Kido asked, genuinely curious, leaning on a nearby stall with a casual ease. "Most people look at me and see, I don't know, someone to be afraid of, someone to avoid. But you, I feel like you're actually seeing me," Lulu explained, her voice a mix of wonder and a hint of skepticism. Kido laughed, a sound as warm and inviting as the sunlight breaking through the canopy of trees. "Well, I believe every person has a story, and I'd much rather learn yours than make assumptions based on rumors or appearances." Lulu found herself smiling, truly smiling, for the first time in what felt like ages. Here was someone who wanted to know her for her, and not for the tales whispered in the shadows. They spent the afternoon together, wandering through the market, sharing stories and laughter. Lulu discovered that Kido had come from a neighboring village, seeking new seeds for his farm. He talked about his love for the earth and how he found peace in the fields under the open sky. In turn, Lulu shared her own love for nature, the way she felt at home among the whispering trees and the gentle streams. As time passed, Lulu and Kido found themselves crossing paths more and more. Each meeting seemed less like coincidence and more like fate drawing them together. Their conversations flowed easily, filled with laughter and shared dreams. Lulu, who had always felt a bit out of place with the people in her village, found a kindred spirit in Kito. He listened to her with an open heart, never judging, always curious. It wasn't long before their friendship deepened into love. Kido had never met anyone like Lulu. Her kindness, her connection to the world around her, and her inner strength drew him in. He saw her not as the village did, but for the incredible person she was. One day, under the shade of an old baobab tree, Kito took Lulu's hands in his. His eyes, bright with emotion, met hers as he said, "Lulu, I love you for everything you are and everything you've brought into my life. Will you marry me? Lulu's heart soared. She had feared her unique nature would mean a life spent alone. But here was Kito, offering her a future filled with love and understanding. Yes, Kito, I will marry you, she replied, her voice filled with joy and hope. Excitedly, Lulu rushed home to share the news with her parents. Her heart was full, imagining a life with Kido. However, the reaction she received was not what she expected. Her mother, Zara, wore a look of deep concern, the joy in Lulu's announcement fading into silence. Lulu, my child, Zara began, her voice heavy with worry. You know I want nothing but happiness for you, but marrying Kido could bring unforeseen dangers to you both. But mother, I love him, and he loves me, for who I am, not for any curse or blessing I might carry. Shouldn't that love be stronger than any warning or fear? Zara looked at her daughter, torn between protecting her and wanting her to experience the fullness of life and love. It's not that simple, Lulu. There are forces at work beyond our understanding. I fear what might happen if we ignore the warnings we've been given. I only want what's best for you, my child, she said, reaching out to touch Lulu's arm. Lulu nodded, her resolve unwavering. I'll keep your words in mind, mother, she said, giving her mother's hand a reassuring squeeze. But I have to follow my heart. Lulu left the room, her heart heavy. She had found love, a rare and precious thing, only to be reminded of the barriers her unique existence had erected around her. She knew her mother spoke out of love and fear, but the thought of giving up Kito, of giving up on the chance at happiness, was unbearable. The next morning, Zara rushed to the witch doctor's hut, only to find it empty. He had passed away years ago. She felt utterly helpless, knowing what was to come. The wedding day arrived, and the village square was alive with celebration. The air was filled with the scent of flowers and the sound of music. As Lulu and Kito stood facing each other, exchanging vows of eternal love, a sudden, fierce wind swept through the square. Before the eyes of the astonished villagers, Lulu's form shimmered and shifted, her body elongating and transforming into that of a giant snake. Panic erupted as people fled in terror, but Kito stood frozen, his heart breaking yet filled with unwavering love. Lulu, now a snake, fled into the forest to hide, her heart aching with the loss of her human life, and the love she feared was forever gone. But Kito's love did not falter. Every day he ventured into the forest, calling out for Lulu, his voice a beacon of unwavering devotion. Lulu, my heart, he would say, our love is stronger than any curse. I am here, always. Kito's quest to find Lulu was fueled by a love so profound that it transcended the physical realm. His days were spent wandering the forest, calling out for his beloved, his nights dreaming of their reunion. One fateful day, guided by an inexplicable force, Kito ventured deeper into the forest than he had ever dared. It was here he found a clearing, where the giant snake lay. His heart recognized her immediately. Lulu, his wife, his love, transformed yet still unmistakably her. Instead of recoiling in fear, Kito stepped forward, his arms outstretched, his eyes shimmering with tears of love and longing. His voice, gentle and unwavering, broke the silence. Lulu, my heart, my soul, it's me, Kito. I've come for you, my love. I will always come for you. The giant snake, Lulu, turned her head, her eyes meeting Kito's. In them, he saw the depths of her despair, her longing, and the flicker of hope rekindled by his presence. With a grace that belied her form, she slithered towards him, her own eyes mirroring his tears. As she drew closer, his arms still open, ready to embrace her, no matter her form. Their embrace was a moment of pure magic, a testament to a love that knew no bounds. Kido held her gently, whispering words of love and devotion. And in that moment, as if the forest itself bore witness to the purity of their love, the curse that had bound Lulu began to unravel. The transformation was a spectacle of nature's magic. Leaves swirling around them in a gentle whirlwind, as if the spirits of the forest were aiding in her liberation. Slowly, The scales gave way to skin, the form of the snake reshaping into the woman Kito had married. When the last leaf fell to the ground, Lulu stood before him, returned to her human form, more beautiful than ever, her eyes alight with tears of joy. Overwhelmed, they held each other tightly, their love sealing the bond that no curse could ever break again. In the tranquility of the forest, surrounded by the gentle sounds of nature, they renewed their vows. This time, their words were not just promises of love, but of gratitude and a deep understanding of the preciousness of their union. Hand in hand, they emerged from the forest. The villagers, who had gathered at the forest's edge, drawn by a hopeful curiosity, welcomed them with tears and cheers. From that day forward, Lulu and Kito's love became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, love can illuminate the path back to ourselves and each other. Their journey through despair and back into the light taught the village and generations to come that true love is not just a feeling, but a force capable of overcoming even the most formidable obstacles.